So this one is on ways to connect the tissue, the body fascia, the fascia of the body, and what I call the fascia of life. So I'm going to cover a lot of ways to connect, but right now I'm going to focus on one of the things that's been really powerful for me in helping understand there's a guy named John Upledger who I've taken a lot of training from him, and one of the courses I took was called somato-emotional release. It was about releasing emotions through the body. And so the very first thing he said in the class was, where does your mind end and your body begin? And I thought that was brilliant, because is there such a thing? And we treat ourselves and we treat others and we treat life that way, but really that doesn't exist. And so how I started, I'll go back a little bit. When I was a kid, my mom used to massage me a lot, and that gave me a real good sense of tactfulness and touch and love, and then when I got a little older and I was boxing, my boxing coach did it, and that helped me calm my nerves before I had a fight. And then when I got a degree in occupational therapy, and I started working in that, and I found that pretty early on I would put my hands on my patients, or I like to call clients. I don't really like to think in those terms, but I was putting my hands on them, and the more I did that, the better results I was getting. And I didn't even know why, exactly. I think it was very intuitive at that point. I would have someone who was curled up in a ball like this. They'd have multiple strokes. And this one lady like that, and I'd walk in a room and she would just start crying. It's something that happens sometimes when people have neurological damage. And I had this goal for her to be able to sit up in a wheelchair and adjust herself around, and so without getting skin ulcers, because if someone's sitting like this, they're going to get skin ulcers through the bones pressing on things. So I had this lady like that, and what I would do with her is I'd come up to her and she'd start crying, and I'd just try to listen. And really, to me, this is what a lot of this is about listening. And so I don't mean just through my ears or your ears. I mean listening with all your senses. And so I would listen to her and try to understand her. And I don't think anyone was doing that. I never ever saw people visiting her. But so I would put my hands on her, and I would just very gently ask her body to open. I didn't try to force anything. I really would start at what I'd call zero, nothing, neutral. And I would just ask, how can I help? And her body would slowly, slowly open. And over time, she got to where she could, her body opened up and she got to where she could sit in a wheelchair and adjust herself around. And then another thing that happened was, instead of that reaction of crying when I walk in the room and say hi, she would start to laugh. I'm like, okay. So that energy shifted inside. Something neurologically happened. And it was from being touched. And it was being touched through what I later learned was the fascia. It's because it's not just like rubbing on the skin like a massage, which can be very helpful. But it's using the skin as a lever into the system. And so what our fascia is, it's the glue that holds every cell of our body together, but it also allows things to move independently of each other. And it says this part's a liver cell, this part's a muscle cell, and it separates things in a way that it also makes everything work together and move together. And a lot of what I've learned over the years is all these different techniques and approaches that treat this amazing tissue. I brought a little poster here of a muscle. A friend of mine, I don't think you mind me saying his name, Sam Hammonds, good friend. He's a great artist. He did this for me. And this is an entire muscle. Let me get over here. Find you better. So So this is representative of an entire muscle. This is surrounded by a sheath of fascia. Kind of like when you see a chicken and you see that shiny stuff on the outside. That's the superficial fascia. And you see these little bundles in here. Those are called fibrils. I'm sorry, fascicles. So these are all these little fascicles inside each muscle. And all of these fascicles have a sheath of fascia around them. And each of those fascicles has these fibrils in them. They're all sheaths of fascia. And all the fibrils have what's called microfibrils, which are muscle cells that are surrounded by a sheath of fascia. It goes all the way to the cellular level. And so, sorry for the holding it back sideways, and that's not just true of our muscles. That's true of everything, every part of us. And so a lot of the work focuses on muscles, but it also focuses on body work. I'd say techniques. I call the therapy, I do connective therapy, but I've learned from different people, myofascial release, which focuses on the connective tissue of the whole body, craniosacral, which focuses on the connective tissue around the brain and the spinal cord, visceral manipulation, which focuses on the connective tissue of the abdomen and the organs. And so those are all really effective ways of working with fascia. And you know, when I first was learning, I had a therapist I worked with who taught me some of this stuff, and she taught me some basics. And so I got out of occupational therapy and went to a seminar, and they were doing a lot of strange seeming things. They were moving, writhing around up there on the stage, and I thought it was put on. I came, I won't tell too much story here, but there was I felt things happening during that workshop, physically, but not like what I saw up on the stage. People were really writhing around and moving and making sounds and crying, and really, it seemed put on. I went home after that, the very first day of worked on someone. He asked me to check on his girlfriend who was there waiting. I worked on her, and I'll make the long story short, I used the approach that I had just learned. I started off with a little bit more massage approach, and she just wasn't feeling better. She had TMJ syndrome going on, and so her jaw was really bothering her. And so I kept trying things I knew, and I said, well, I worked on her jaw, felt a little better, worked on the neck, felt a little better, but didn't feel quite right. And I said, let me take this other perspective. And so I just had her stand up, and I just looked at her. I looked at her kind of like, if you look at a hot road down the distance, you see kind of steam coming off of it. That's how I looked at her. That's how I've learned to look at people when I'm assessing their body. And so I just looked at her that way, kind of through her almost, and when my eyes went right down to about this area on her, what's called the psoas muscle, deep inside. And I put my hands on, show you. These bones, called the Ilia bones, I compared them to each other. So you put your fingers on these and you compare them. They should be level in a healthy person. But a lot of us are imbalanced structurally. No one's perfectly balanced. I'm not. But I work at it. And so one side was like 3/4 of an inch higher than the other. This is a very young woman, like 17 years old. I had her lay down. My instinct was to go right for her psoas. I did that. And her body started to writhe around, did all the things they did at that seminar. And I instantly knew what it was. I was totally at ease. I understood. Somehow I understood. I knew she had been molested. And we stopped for a little bit because it was freaking her out a little. And so I talked to her boyfriend and I said, well, I think something happened to her, like sexually. He said, her father. Right away he said that. He knew, and I went back and I talked to her. I said, can we, I know this is very uncomfortable. I said, but I think this would be very helpful. Because you've got this stuff in your body. Your body's doing this because it knows it's in a safe place to let it out. This is stuff that's trapped in your body. Our whole life memory is in our body, just like the rings of a tree. People who are experts at that can look at the rings of a tree and they can tell you, well, this is a lot of this year they got a lot of snow. This year, they can tell these things. And someone who's been trained in this kind of work can listen to the body in that way and help someone facilitate that.
Chad, can I ask you, so the discrepancy that you saw or felt, I guess, did that trigger that emotional response in her then? Is that what you're...
Yeah. One of the things I've learned to do, I visually do that, but also a lot of times I'll put my hand on top of the head. Can you come up here and I'll show what I mean? So like I'll look at someone like this and think, well, where's their body most struggling? And my eyes will get drawn to it. And I won't put you on the spot too bad, but
okay.
But my eyes are getting, and you've drawn, I guess I am putting on the spot. right in here, okay. Right in here. So I can do it visually. But also I'll put one hand on top of the head and I'll say, where is she leaning toward? The body leans toward what it's most struggling with. And I feel that same area leaning this way, and I can feel it more in the front. And then when I touch it, what happens? Her body's moving. I don't know if you can see it. Do you feel it?
I do.
And I'm barely touching her, but what's happening, her body's telling me exactly what she's most struggling with. And our bodies communicate these things all the time. It's just learning to listen. And so, yeah, that's exactly what I was doing.
There's a direct correlation then to the emotional component with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I have a lot of people that come to me. I'm not here to sell my business. I'm here to try and tell people the importance of understanding this. But I have a lot of people that come to me, and the majority of what I do with them is physical. And that's fine, and that's great. I've been an athlete my whole life, and I still am, and that's a lot of what I get done. I have someone work on me. But this is an important aspect of it, and it's important to understand that what's in our thoughts, our beliefs, our physicality, they're tied together. And there's ways of freeing us from what's inside of us. And I've seen people, one person I've worked with a lot recently that I was struggling a lot with the intensity of some of this. And I've encouraged her to continue. And I said, and one of the things I said was, if you can always run away. And I've had some people run away, and I've at moments wanted to run away.
It scares them because they don't know what's happening.
What's uncomfortable can be scary.
Yeah. Right.
But one thing I learned from boxing was to go into my fear. When you go into your fear, what happens to it? It dissolves. It turns into something else. Always. Every single time. But I told her, I said, if you do this and you keep doing this, and it's going to get smaller. You're going to get the difficult part's going to get easier, and it's just going to change.
You had an example of a patient or a client that was a Holocaust survivor. You told me that story. Yeah. Invoking emotion that she didn't recognize what was happening.
Absolutely. Let me go back to that one just for a moment.
Yep.
And what I told this person was that what's going to happen is people around you are going to find you more attractive. They want to be around you. They want some of what you have. Several months went by, and that's exactly what started happening. She said people are coming up to her and saying, I want what you've got. And she ended up losing like 20 pounds. That wasn't part of the plan, but that happened. And why? Well, I'll talk in another video about some other people with weight issues and eating and stuff like that. But it relates with what we hold. And about the Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So she gave me permission to not use her full name, Anna B. She told me to tell people, but really amazing older lady. She's a current client, and I started working on her, and she had her whole life she had scoliosis, and she had kyphosis, a lot of kyphosis, really curved over like this way. And when I met her, her chin was on her chest, like this, and so she couldn't. So she went from being independent to having to have people with her a lot to help her most of the time, because she can't get around, she's getting weaker, but she can't do stuff when she's living like this. Well, she had a fall, and then she broke her sternum. And so, and what that did is it curved all this forward. As I was talking to her and learning about this, she would be laying there or sitting, depending on how I had her, and her leg would start shaking. And these things come out differently in different people. There's something called the freeze response. We got the fight or flight response, we've got the freeze response. The freeze response is, when a bear catches you and you freeze, you don't plan it, but you freeze, or a cat catches the mouse freezes, cat leaves it alone, the mouse takes off. Then when it gets away, it shakes. It shakes off that energy. And so that's what was happening. She started telling me stuff. She's like, I don't know why I'm telling this stuff, but she started telling me first about her husband, who had died not very long ago, like 5 years ago or something. And then, after she told that a little bit, she started telling me about being in the Holocaust in Auschwitz. And started telling me some of the details of it. It was really amazing to me.
And again, that was invoked by the physical.
Yes.
That was a physical response to start.
Right. It's just stuff in her body. And at different points, I started understanding different things about what was going on. With her scoliosis, I said, how long has that been there? She said, since I was about 13. And I said, when were you in Auschwitz? When I was 13. I was like, oh. And then she started telling me, after I asked those questions, she said, well, they were forcing me to do hard labor, and I was starving. She got down to like 80 pounds or something. So, it's like, oh. And she said later on they realized that they caused her scoliosis, so Germany gave her some money for that. But yeah, I mean, it's, and this is another thing, is I asked her at one point, and this may sound ridiculous, I don't know, but it's not. And that is, I'm going to bounce around a little bit here. Just my dance coach, he says to me, if you want a radically different result, you have to think radically different. And so that's really true, I think. Anything I say, let it flow through you. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. You just let it move through you if you would, and something hopefully is beneficial from this. One of the things, speaking on that, is that she, I said to her, I asked her one day, I said, what from that experience, how does that benefit your life today? And she's like, how could that benefit anyone? I said, I don't know. But there might be, I don't know. And so, over a period of time, we came to discover how that came to benefit her. She was, I don't know that she ever made the connection, but she does now. She was at a prominent university. She was, but she went on to become a professor of genetics, which is interesting, right? But she was for 16 different years, she was considered the best, she got some kind of award for being the best science professor at the university she was at. And then one year she was rated the best overall professor. And to me, what that says is about how everything is connected. It's about how her experience, she could not have gotten that any other way unless she had something really challenging that made her understand and get to people. You don't get that kind of rating without understanding people. And how do you understand them? Sometimes it's through suffering and coming out on the other side and transforming that into something really amazing. And that's what she did. She said to me, well, I didn't discover anything. I said, well, maybe you did. Maybe you discovered a lot. because all the people that you affected through your transformation, you didn't lay down and curl up in a ball and die. There were many opportunities she had for that, but she did some amazing stuff. and she inspired a lot of people. And so that's what I'm hoping to do through some of this work here.
That's a great story. Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Did we talk about fashion? I think we did. There's a lot to it. Like I said, it's like speaking a language. I can't tell you everything right now in this little video, but we gave a little bit of understanding of how it can work. And any other thoughts right now? Okay. All right, we're going to continue on to discover how everything is connected in this video series.